Committee chairs. Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the MLA for Vancouver-Langara and in my role as the official opposition Shadow Minister for the Attorney General today, I want to raise a matter that is not only of great concern to our communities, but also indicative of the broader issue within our approach to public safety and youth engagement. In the wake of continued concerns about youth safety, gang recruitment, and the general well-being of students within our educational system, the role and presence of school liaison officers has never been more critical. Recent developments across British Columbia, from Victoria to Vancouver, have indicated a troubling trend towards the reduction or outright removal of school liaison officers from our schools. In Victoria, for example, the alarming increase in gang-related activities as reported by Victoria Police Chief Del Manick underscores a critical need for the proactive preventative measures that school liaison officers provide. The arrest of a suspected gang member targeting students for recruitment starkly illustrates the vacuum left by the absence of these police officers. Madam Speaker, we're not only talking about teenagers at the cusp of graduating from high school or young adults or youth. We're talking about children as young as 11 years old. It has been reported that most schools in the Greater Victoria area have students involved in these gang-affiliated trafficking schemes using students to sell drugs and vapes. Victoria Police arrested an alleged gang member just last month who was accused of recruiting kids in several parking lots that were adjacent to schools during a school day. Police Chief Del Manick is calling on the Victoria School Board to reinstate the school liaison police officer program, which he says helps steer youth away from joining gangs. And I would say, Madam Speaker, that as indicated by the Chair of the Victoria School Board, in the 4 months prior to, since the removal of school liaison officers in Victoria, the data shows that just in the first 4 months that there was an increase of crime involving youth reported in the region by 12%. When we saw this in Vancouver with Deputy Chief Fiona Wilson, she indicated that since 2017 there had been a continual decrease at schools, but that pattern had changed in 2022 when the schools were without school liaison officers, with calls overall increasing by 16%, violent crime increased by 19%, and assaults increased by 27%. Madam Speaker, this correlation is undeniable. In Vancouver, we've seen the reinstatement of the school liaison officer program. In response to community concerns, they made adjustments. I know that at my children's elementary school, this was the first exposure for my children and friends of their age. In terms of the school liaison officer coming to present and teach about road safety. These were the first examples of the relationship that is built up with members of our police force in Vancouver. Developing those relationships early on is an understanding and recognition of rules and laws and good citizenship. We can also learn from the partnership, the 50-year partnership between the Delta Police Department and Delta School District, which stands also as a testament to the invaluable role that school liaison officers play in our communities. We've seen through that program, where they serve 37 public and private independent schools from elementary to secondary, that work is rooted in education, prevention, and building positive relationships with youth. This proactive approach to community policing has contributed to making Delta one of the safest communities in the Lower Mainland. And I know, when talking to members of the police force there in Delta, that they've been able to develop those relationships, including with members of the Tsawwassen First Nation. And when a young person there had engaged in some graffiti-type activity at the local school, there was an early intervention. There was a teaching of responsibility and accountability. And that early path correction led to a better path for that young individual. We've seen that the decision by some school districts to cut school liaison officer programs has sparked significant community backlash with rallies and public outcry calling for their reinstatement. Parents, educators, and police officers have united in their support for the program, highlighting the positive impact school liaison officers have had in fostering safe school environments and deterring youth from engaging in harmful activities. The evidence is clear. Where school liaison officers are present, school benefits from decreased crime rates, early intervention for at-risk youth, and a stronger, more positive relationship between students and law enforcement. Yet despite this, there exists a push, influenced by the anti-police sentiment in our province, to remove these vital resources from our schools. This movement is not only grounded in the reality of our community's needs, but rather in a broader, often more politicized discourse that fails to prioritize the safety and well-being of our students, our children. As we consider the future of youth and school environments, we must learn to question this and ask, despite the Premier's stance on policing, highlighted by his past actions and publications that have really undervalued the importance of public safety and law enforcement in our province, this harmful rhetoric around those serving on the front lines, those who risk their lives every day to keep us safe, coming from this government caucus in the past, has continued to fuel this dangerous anti-police mentality in British Columbia. We know the Premier has a long history of criticizing law enforcement officials and making misleading statements about women and men in uniform. In fact, the Premier wrote the book on how to sue the police, criticize police activities at the 2010 Olympics, and his anti-police activism has drawn sharp rebuke from the head of the Vancouver Police Union. We know that members of the government caucus were at that rally back in September 2023, where there was a speaker there that said, "Cops out of schools." It's this kind of sentiment that we have to rise above in this legislative chamber. We need to recognize our shared duty to protect and nurture the potential within each young person in our school system. I call on this government to confirm their commitment to our students' safety, their education, and the path forward, and to reinstate school liaison officer programs across our province. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member.